Sienna God, hello all. Good afternoon, and Wado. Thank you for watching. So this is day 6 of reading Propaganda by Edward Bernays. And I'm so excited because I'm almost done. Thank you for hanging in. And it was filled with a bunch of good stuff. But I am so ready to read this next book. And what's crazy to Banana Pants is it totally is like on point. I have not read it in full because I'm gonna tell you, when I started it years ago, it got me really irked. Okay, so it's like, let me table that till later. And then when I started reading books, it's like our own little book club, right? When I started reading books on line for you guys, I thought, let me get through these books that like started to put me to sleep or kind of upset me because I was like, why are they doing this? Why doesn't everybody know this? Anyway, I know it's an agenda. Okay, so let's get through it. I'm so excited. Let's see. Must boldly assume aesthetic leadership. Study the best. Yeah, that's where I ended. As in art, so in science, both pure and applied. Pure science was once guarded and fostered by learned societies and scientific associations. Now, pure science finds support and encouragement also in industry. Many of the laboratories in which abstract research is being pursued are now connected with some large corporation, which is quite willing to devote hundreds of thousands of dollars to scientific study for the sake of one golden invention or discovery which may emerge from it. Big business, of course, gains heavily when the invention emerges, but at that very moment, it assumes the responsibility of placing the new invention at the service of the public. It assumes also the responsibility of interpreting its meaning to the public. The industrial interests can furnish to the schools, the colleges, and the postgraduate university courses the exact truth concerning the scientific progress of our age. They not only can do so, they are under obligation to do so. Propaganda as an instrument of commercial competition has opened opportunities to the inventor and given great stimulus to the research scientist. In the last 5 or 10 years, this is from 1928, remember that, the successes of some of the larger corporations have been so outstanding that the whole field of science has received a tremendous impetus, I-M-P-E-T-U-S. The American Telephone and Telegraph Company, nice, and Western Electric Company, the General Electric Company, the Westinghouse Electric Company, and others have realized the importance of scientific research. They have also understood that their ideas must be made intelligible to the public to be fully successful. Television, broadcasting, loudspeakers are utilized as propaganda aids. Propaganda assists in marketing new inventions. Propaganda, by repeatedly interpreting new scientific ideas and inventions to the public, has made the public more receptive. Propaganda is accustoming the public to change and progress. Chapter 11, The Mechanics of Propaganda. The media by which special pleaders transmit their messages to the public through propaganda include all the means by which people today transmit their ideas to one another. There is no means of human communication which may not also by a means of deliberate propaganda There is no means of human communication which may not also be a means of deliberate propaganda. Oh, yeah. Because propaganda is simply the establishing of reciprocal understanding between an individual and a group. The important point to the propagandist is that the relative value of the various instruments of propaganda and their relation to the masses are constantly changing. If he is to get full reach for his message, he must take advantage of these shifts of value the instant they occur. Well, yeah, that's true. He's got to be on it. 50 years ago, the public meeting was a propaganda instrument par excellence. Today, it is difficult to get more than a handful of people to attend a public meeting unless extraordinary attractions are part of the program. Well, it's like, what is in it for me? Right? Anyway, that's just generally how people operate. Me, I don't operate like that anymore, and I'm so grateful that I don't, and I'm so much happier for it, because then I'm not disappointed if nobody gives me anything. You know what I mean? The automobile takes them away from home. The radio keeps them in the home. The successive daily editions of the newspaper bring information to them in office or subway, and also they are sick of the ballyhoo of the rally. Instead, there are numerous other media of communication, some new, others old, but so transformed that they have become virtually new. The newspaper, of course, remains always a primary medium for the transmission of opinions and ideas, in other words, for propaganda. It was not many years ago that newspaper editors resented what they called the use, in quotes, the use of the news columns for propaganda purposes, end quote. Some editors would even kill a good story if they imagined its publication might benefit anyone. This point of view is now largely abandoned. Well, that's sad because they freaking brought it back. And they're like, I don't care, we're putting it out there anyway, whether it's factual or not, which totally sucks because of it's like clickbait or whatever. But anyway, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I just care if the product is good to go, and I care that the people are kind and they give back and they're not discriminatory. You know what I'm saying? Today, the leading editorial offices take the view that the real criterion governing the publication or non-publication of matter which comes to the desk is its new value. The newspaper cannot assume, nor is it its function to assume, the responsibility of guaranteeing that what it publishes will not work out to somebody's interest. There is hardly a single item in any daily paper, the publication of which does not or might not profit or injure somebody. That is the nature of news. What the newspaper does strive for is that the news which it publishes shall be accurate and, in parentheses, since it must select from the mass of news material available, and then end parentheses, that it shall be of interest and importance to large groups of its readers. In its editorial columns, the newspaper is a personality commenting upon things and events from its individual point of view. But in its news columns, a typical modern American newspaper attempts to reproduce with due regard to news interests, the outstanding events and opinions of the day. It does not ask whether a given item is propaganda or not. What is important is that it be news. And that's what I was just thinking. Like, if I want to hear the news, I want to hear the news. I don't want to hear like gossip stuff. Like, that's just, it doesn't make any sense to me for that to be in like something that's supposed to tell you about what's really going on. You know what I mean? Anyway. And in the selection of news, the editor is usually entirely independent. In the New York Times, to take an outstanding example, news is printed because of its news value and for no other reason. That's my point. The Times editors determine, which they don't do that now, I'm just going to tell you flat out, they literally don't. I think the CIA owns the New York Times, and I'm not trying to be funny, I'm dead serious. The Times editors determine with complete independence what is and what is not news. I have this gnat, and it's just like literally natting. It's natting it up in it. Oh my god, I cracked myself up. Okay, the Times editors are right. They brook no censorship. They are not influenced by any external pressure nor swayed by any values of expediency or opportunism. And that's why I loved watching the news growing up, because there was like true investigative reporting and none of that hullabaloo. You know what I mean? The conscientious editor on every newspaper realizes that his obligation to the public is news. Right. The fact of its accomplishment makes it news. If the Public Relations Council can breathe the breath of life into an idea and make it take its place among other ideas and events, it will receive the public attention it merits. There can be no question of his contaminating, in quotes, contaminating news at its source, end quote. He creates some of the day's events which must compete in the editorial office with other events. Often the events which he creates may be specially acceptable to a newspaper's public, and he may create them with the public in mind. If important things of life today consist of transatlantic radio phone talks arranged by commercial telephone companies, if they consist of inventions that will be commercially advantageous to the men who market them, if they consist of Henry Fords with epic making cars, then all this is news. The so-called flow of propaganda into the newspaper offices of the country may simply, at the editor's discretion, find its way to the wastebasket. More needs to be in the wastebasket now, right? The source of the news offered, I mean, they have us coming and going. We have no idea what's real, what's not. So we have to use our own discernment, and that's why I cut out everything. I don't listen to news and stuff. The source of the news offered to the editor should always be clearly stated and the facts accurately presented. The situation of the magazines at the present moment from the propagandist's point of view is different from that of the daily newspapers. The average magazine assumes no obligation, as the newspaper does, to reflect the current news. It selects its material deliberately in accordance with a continuous policy that is not like the newspaper or an organ of public opinion, but tends rather to become a propagandist organ, propagandizing for a particular idea, whether it be good housekeeping or smart apparel, or beauty and home decoration, or debunking public opinion, or general enlightenment, or liberalism, or amusement. One magazine may aim to sell health, another English gardens, another fashionable menswear, another Nietzschean philosophy. In all departments in which the various magazines specialize, the Public Relations Counsel may play an important part, for he may, because of his client's interest, assist them to create the events which further their propaganda. A bank, in order to emphasize the importance of its women's department, may arrange to supply a leading women's magazine with a series of articles and advice on investments written by the woman expert in charge of this department. The women's magazine, in turn, will utilize this new feature as a means of building additional prestige and circulation. The lecture, once a powerful means of influencing public opinion, has changed its value. The lecture itself may be only a symbol, a ceremony. Its importance for propaganda purposes lies in the fact that it was delivered. Professor so-and-so, expounding an epoch-making invention, may speak to 500 persons or only 50. His lecture, if it is important, will be broadcast. Reports of it will appear in the newspapers. Discussion will be stimulated. The real value of the lecture from the propaganda point of view is in its repercussion to the general public. The radio is at present one of the most important tools of the propagandist. Its future development is uncertain. It may compete with the newspaper as an advertising medium. Its ability to reach millions of persons simultaneously naturally appeals to the advertiser. And since the average advertiser has a limited appropriation for advertising, money spent on the radio will tend to be withdrawn from the newspaper. To what extent is a publisher alive to this new phenomenon? It is bound to come close to American journalism and publishing. Newspapers have recognized the advertising potentialities of the companies that manufacture radio apparatus and of radio stores, large and small, and newspapers have accorded to the radio in their news and feature columns an importance relative to the increasing attention given by the public to radio. At the same time, certain newspapers have bought radio stations and linked them up with their news and entertainment distribution facilities, supplying these two features over the air to the public. It is possible that newspaper chains will sell schedules of advertising space on the air and on paper. Newspaper chains will possibly contract with advertisers for circulation on paper and over the air. There are at present publishers who sell space in the air and in their columns, but they regard the two as separate ventures. Large groups, political, racial, sectarian, economic, or professional, are tending to control stations to propagandize their points of view. Or is it conceivable that America may adopt the English licensing system under which the listener instead of the advertiser pays? They did that. Whether the present, now, I don't know when they started that, probably like in the last 10 years or so. Whether the present system has changed, the advertiser and propagandist must necessarily adapt himself to it. Whether in the future airspace will be sold openly as such, or whether the message will reach the public in the form of straight entertainment and news or as special programs for particular groups. The propagandist must be prepared to meet the conditions and utilize them. The American motion picture is the greatest unconscious carrier of propaganda in the world today. It is a great distributor for ideas and opinions. The motion picture can standardize the ideas and habits of a nation because pictures are made to meet market demands. They reflect, emphasize, and even exaggerate broad popular tendencies. Rather than simulate new ideas and opinions, the motion picture avails itself only of ideas and facts which are in vogue. As the newspaper seeks to purvey news, it seeks to purvey entertainment. Another instrument of propaganda is the personality. Has the device of the exploited personality been pushed too far? President Coolidge, photographed on his vacation in full Indian regalia in company with full-blooded chiefs, was the climax of a greatly over-reported vacation. Obviously, a public personality came can be made absurd by misuse of the very mechanism which helped create it. Yet the vivid dramatization of personality will always remain one of the functions of the Public Relations Council. The public instinctively demands a personality to typify a conspicuous corporation or enterprise. There is a story that a great financier discharged a partner because he had divorced his wife. In quotes, "But what?" asked the partner. "Have my private affairs to do with the banking business?" End quote. And then in quotes again, "If you are not capable of managing your own wife," was the reply, "the people will certainly believe that you are not capable of managing their money." End quote. The propagandist must treat personality as he would treat any other objective fact with his province. And in that situation, it's not that you can manage your own wife. It is managing your relationship and having the wherewithal and the pride and the ego to see it through. And if it can't be seen through, to then divorce and go your separate ways. But then in the 1920s, I do believe if you were divorced or divorcee, as they said, right, then you're really looked down on. But anyway, a personality may create circumstances, as Lindbergh created goodwill between the United States and Mexico. Events may create a personality. As the Cuban War created the political figure of Roosevelt, it is often difficult to say which creates the other. Once a public figure has decided what ends he wishes to achieve, he must regard himself objectively and present an outward picture of himself which is consistent with his real character and his aims. There are a multitude of other avenues of approach to the public mind, some old, some new, as television. Nice. No attempt will be made to discuss each one separately. The school may disseminate information concerning scientific facts. The fact that a commercial concern may eventually profit from a widespread understanding of its activities because of this does not condemn the dissemination of such information, provided that the subject merits study on the part of the students. If a baking corporation contributes pictures and charts to a school to show how bread is made, these propaganda activities, if they are accurate and candid, are in no way reprehensible, provided the school authorities accept or reject such offers carefully on their educational merits. It may be that a new product will be announced to the public by means of motion picture of a parade taking place 1,000 miles away, or the manufacturer of a new jitney airplane may personally appear and speak in 1,000,000 homes through radio and television. The man who would most effectively transmit his message to the public must be alert to make use of all the means of propaganda. Undoubtedly, the public is becoming aware of the methods which are being used to mold its opinions and habits. If the public is better informed about the processes of its own life, it will be so much the more receptive to reasonable appeals to its own interests, no matter how sophisticated. How cynical the public may become about publicity methods, it must respond to the basic appeals because it will always need food, crave amusement, long for beauty, respond to leadership. If the public becomes more intelligent in its commercial demands, commercial firms will meet the new standards. That's what we keep forgetting. If it becomes weary of the old methods used to persuade it to accept a given idea or commodity, its leaders will present their appeals more intelligently. Exactly. Propaganda will never die out. Intelligent men must realize that propaganda is the modern instrument by which they can fight for productive ends and help to bring order out of chaos. And it says the end. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm going to read the next book next. So exciting. Then to go hang game and good shine skate. So again, love you minute.